For America, the Vietnam War was one of the toughest trials in history. It is remembered not only for the battles in the jungles, but also for the wounds left in every soldier's heart. Young soldier Michael Brown came from an ordinary family in New York. After finishing school, he was drafted into the Army to fulfill his military duty. When Michael joined the Army, he felt like a hero, but he could never have imagined the hell that awaited him in the jungles of Vietnam. As soon as he arrived at a military base not far from Saigon, the scorching air, swarms of flies and mosquitoes, the swamp, the unfamiliar language, and the foreign culture instantly made him feel as if he had entered another world. Beside Michael were many soldiers just as young as he was. They all tried to survive only by relying on one another. At night, the jungle was never silent. Among the sounds of beetles, frogs, and unknown birds, every soldier feared that at any moment gunfire could erupt. The Viet Cong would set ambushes and traps. Every step was a decisive moment between life and death. One day, their unit went on a reconnaissance mission deep in the forest. Michael was walking in the front line. Suddenly, a loud explosion rang out. The sound of a mine echoed through the jungle. After the blast, cries of soldiers pierced through the smoke. His closest friend John collapsed instantly. Michael ran to his side and held his hand. With tears in his eyes, John whispered, "Hug my mother. Keep telling her, I'll be back." But he died right there. That moment scarred Michael's heart forever. It was then that he realized war was not about heroism, but about tragedy. The days of war dragged on. Every morning, soldiers awoke unsure if they would live to see the next. By day they tracked through the jungle, and by night they had no chance to sleep peacefully. Even when it rained, they were forced to lie in the rotten soil, in the thick mud. Michael developed the habit of keeping a diary. On the pages, he wrote only one thing: "I want to go home." Later, he learned that in the United States, people were protesting against the war. But in those moments, in the middle of the jungle, their only wish was to survive. Michael's unit was sent near the city of Hue. The battles in this area were extremely bloody. The city streets were in ruins, turned into rubble. Inside every window, behind every wall, the Viet Cong could be hiding. The American soldiers had to step carefully with every move. For the first time, Michael witnessed real urban warfare. The hidden dangers of the jungle were one thing, but now, death lurked at every corner of the street. With his rifle in hand, he moved between the wrecked buildings when suddenly a grenade fell right in front of him. At that very moment, his sergeant, Bill, threw himself over Michael. The explosion knocked them both down, but the sergeant was gravely wounded. Covered in blood, the sergeant looked at Michael and whispered weakly, "Never blame yourself. We came here for each other." Those words stayed in Michael's heart forever. The days of war dragged on. The smile had vanished from Michael's face, and his eyes were filled with heavy thoughts. He was no longer the naive young man he once was. After every battle he lost a friend, and every day brought a new wound. In the spring of 1969, their company set out on a major operation through the jungle. The heat and humidity glued their uniforms to their skin. It felt as if the enemy was hiding behind every bush. Suddenly, the soldier in front was shot. Then the jungle echoed with bursts of gunfire. Michael's heart pounded as he joined the firefight. The sound of bullets, screams, explosions. Everything turned into hell in an instant. When the battle was over, blood-soaked bodies lay scattered on the ground. Michael had lost several men from his company. That night, sitting in the silence of the forest, He opened his small diary and wrote, "God, how many more friends will I have to bury? When will this war end? Why are we even here?" From afar, the nighttime jungle sounds echoed, sometimes a frog, sometimes an unknown bird. But to Michael, behind those sounds there always seemed to be the hidden echo of gunfire. He thought of his home, the streets of New York, and his mother. But the war gave him no peace. Do you want me to combine both translations, the first part you gave about 1968 and this one about Hugh in 1969, into a single flowing story in English so it reads like a short historical tale? As the months went by, Michael's soul was breaking apart. Each day was a new test of survival. But the hardest moments were not the firefights. They were seeing the suffering of innocent civilians. One day, their unit passed by a small village hidden in the jungle. Children were playing there when suddenly gunfire erupted, and chaos broke out. The soldiers could not even tell if the enemy was present. Michael saw innocent people terrified, running into their homes to hide. His heart ached and he felt guilty. That night, by the fire, he opened his diary once again and wrote, "I am not fighting the enemy, I am fighting my own fear. The terror in those children's eyes will stay with me forever." By the end of 1969, Michael's unit was once again sent to the front lines. This time, they took part in a long operation in the dense forests of Vietnam. Every step sank into mud. Every breath was suffocated by the hot, heavy air. One night, they were suddenly surrounded. Viet Cong soldiers opened fire from all sides, throwing grenades. The explosions shook the ground like an earthquake. Michael gripped his weapon tightly and fired back. Around him, men were falling, the screams and blasts unending. During that battle, he was badly wounded. A blast knocked down a tree, and he was pinned beneath it, bleeding. As his vision darkened, only one thought remained: "I must go home, just home." At that moment, 2 soldiers from his unit risked their lives to lift the tree and pull him free. They carried him to safety, and he was evacuated by helicopter. Lying in the hospital, Michael made a vow to himself. If he survived, he would never hide the truth about this war. Months later, he was sent back to America. When he stepped once more onto the streets of New York, he felt like a stranger in a foreign world. People laughed, restaurants sang with music, life went on. But in his ears, he still heard the jungle's thrum, the echoes of explosions. Michael was not welcomed as a celebrated hero. Instead, he was met with the shouts of protesters against the war. They yelled at the soldiers, "Why did you fight this war? How many innocent people were killed?" This wounded Michael's heart even more deeply. From the day Michael returned from the army, his heart felt split in two. On one side were the faces of the friends he had left behind in the jungle, their last words, their unfinished lives. On the other side was the false calm of civilian life, a society that did not understand him. Every night he dreamed. In his sleep, he was back in Vietnam. A grenade flew through the thick leaves. John's voice rang out beside him. Michael would wake up screaming, his hands trembling, his body drenched in sweat, clutching his diary to his chest. Now, in his diary, he began to write, "I don't know if we won the war or lost it, but every one of my friends who stood by my side was a victor because they gave their lives for others." But in America, things were different. On the streets, people looked at him with hostile eyes. Some shouted, "Murderers! Butchers of innocent people!" Again and again, one question tormented Michael: "Am I a hero or a criminal?" When his wounds finally healed and he returned home, his mother embraced him with tears. But in the silence of the night, he knew she also sensed how much he had changed. Michael was no longer the smiling young man he once was. Now his eyes carried heavy memories and sorrow. Sometimes he would call out the names of his friends. John, Bill, Kevin, I will never forget you. He often began visiting the local Veterans Club. There, he found the only people who truly understood him. In their conversations, each of them shared the wounds they had carried from the jungle, and then fell silent together. What united them all was the truth that, though they had returned home, the war had never truly ended. Years later, Michael decided to publish his diary. He titled it The Silence of the Jungle. In this book, he wrote the raw truth of war: friendship, fear, guilt, loss, and survival. When it was released, some readers cried. For the first time, they saw the Vietnam War through the eyes of a soldier. And for Michael, the book became his only way of lightening the heavy burden within him. Yet in his heart, one dream remained. May young men never again lose their lives in someone else's war. The years flew by. Though Michael grew old, the wound in his heart never healed. Yet he did not waste his life. He made it his habit to visit schools and tell young people the truth about war. At every meeting, he would stand in silence for a moment before beginning to speak slowly. I will not tell you about glory. I will tell you the truth. War never brings victory. It only leaves scars. When the young people listened to his words, the whole hall would fall silent. Some could not hold back their tears. One day, after a meeting, a young man approached him and shook his hand. Sir, if I hadn't heard your story, maybe I would have gone to the army too. But you changed my mind. Thank you. Michael looked into the boy's eyes, and his heart warmed. For the first time in his life, he felt that speaking the truth had not been in vain. That night, he opened the last page of his diary and wrote, I went to Vietnam as a young soldier, but I returned forever as a veteran. The war took my friends from me, but their memories live on in my heart. If I can save even one life, then my struggle has not been in vain. He put down his pen, closed the diary, and took a deep breath. Outside the window, the lights of New York glowed in the night. For a moment, he truly felt he had found peace. The peace he had been searching for all his life. Friends, if this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe to our channel. And from which city are you watching? Share your thoughts in the comments. By the way, have you ever served in the army? Or do you consider yourself a veteran? I look forward to your answers.